meeting to order and welcome every one of you, and thank you so much for being here today for our first Senate meeting of the year. We're very excited. This year is going to be one of the most important in the history of the university, as you will hear throughout the presentations today. We have a lot on our plate. And I'd just like to give you a run-through of 10 points that face us, just so you know what we will be facing together and why your service through the Senate is crucial to this institution. I'll start with the issue of policies. The policies that were not signed by the President have now been reviewed by the General Counsel, and at least some of them will be going back to their Senate committees, and we have received now new policies from Lynette Schenkel to consider in a revised version. So policies is number one on our agenda for the year. Number two, and by the way, these are not in order of importance. Number two is the Constitution, which needs to be ratified this year. There will be a calling of the Faculty Assembly to do this. Number three is the issue of the police force and various questions that community members have been discussing in relationship to the various statements and policies that are being put into force. We will be having a special open discussion at the November meeting about the police force. Point four, the enrollment increases. How many have noticed the increase in traffic on campus? Bicycle traffic and also auto traffic. It's very important for us to be aware of this because I don't know how many of you are driving to school or how many of you are riding bicycles, but there are difficulties on both sides of that equation, and we need to address those. I've seen so many near misses around campus in terms of safety that I'm seeing some head shaking. This is very important for us to look at this in an intelligent manner. And point five is our vision plan, which we will be formulating through the Senate retreat. It's the first such retreat that we've ever had at this institution. We need to remember that, as I mentioned in May in my address to the Senate, we are a unity of constituencies, meaning faculty, students, officers of administration, officers of research, and classified staff. We all have a stake in the future of this university, and we need to formulate a vision plan together that expresses our common will. And this then needs to be presented to the central administration, and we need to have an open discussion about this. That is our tradition at this university, open and respectful discussion about those matters which are most important to us. Point six, shared governance. I'm instituting the President's Forums and the Provost Forums. There will be one each quarter. I'm thrilled that both President LaRiviere and Interim Provost Davis are excited about these. The first Provost Forum will be on Wednesday, October 19th in Bell Hall at the School of Music and Dance from 4 to 6. And the first President's Forum will be Wednesday, November 2nd in Bell Hall at the School of Music and Dance from 4 to 6. So we're thrilled about these. This will be a time for the entire community, all stakeholders in the university, to come and have an open and respectful discussion with the President and the Provost. And that is truly a step forward for our shared governance system. Point seven is the policy on policies. The Senate Executive Committee, as you will hear later today, will be formulating a policy on policies related to the flow of policy making at the university and the role of the Senate in this flow of policy making. The eighth point is the union. You may have heard a lot about the union and AAUP, and I've invited the union for our November meeting to give a presentation and receive questions and answers, or I should say representatives from the union. Proposed union. The ninth point is communication and service. This is a crucial point that we must strengthen all of the aspects of our commitment to service And that means each and every one of you, we need you more than ever to join in this common effort to move our shared governance system forward and to achieve meaningful action, purposeful action on all of these points. And the 10th is the academic plan. It is now under review. We'll be going before various bodies at the university, including this one. And we really need your input on this. Not much to do in 1 year, is it? You can see that this is a very important year in the history of the university, and your participation in it at full throttle is really needed. Thank you so much for everything that you are doing and willing to do in the future. Next, I'd like to introduce Jane Gordon, Associate Dean of the Law School, who will give us a message of welcome from the Dean of the Law School, Michael Moffitt. Jane?
Well, welcome to the law school. I see you all doing the typical student sit back, and having heard what you are about to embark upon, I can see why. I don't want to be seen as like the auctioneer raising your hand too quickly and hoping to get called upon for more service. But welcome to law school. Is this where the meetings are going to be held?
In the fall.
For the fall. So welcome many times this fall as you undertake that very important work that was just described to you and that will be described to you. I was thinking that about 13 years ago, maybe even 12 years ago, where we are right now was like a swamp and these temporary Quonset huts. How many of you were here then? The swamp turned out to be this broken pipe, I think, that we were paying for water for years and years and years. And when this building started to be constructed, we discovered that. So the law school used to be over on Kincaid, and when we were looking at a remodel, it was thought, well, you know, actually the law school should come over here because we don't have undergraduates who we need to keep within the like 15-minute transfer time between classes. And however many minutes it is, 7 minutes, that could get to, okay, let's take the former law school and make that a building that could be used by undergraduates and build the law school over here. And at the time, so this building is now 11 years old, and at the time, I remember thinking that, I wonder if this building will ever be more like the middle of campus. And look at it now. I mean, it's just amazing to me. I was just thinking about that when I was thinking about you all walking here. And I was thinking about our colleagues who just moved from Oregon Hall to the Peace Health building, so they're making a further move to the west. And our move to the east here with the new arena, the new alumni center, the new dorm, which will have 5 classrooms in it, the new longhouse right behind us, and this law school now 11 years old. It will never be the center of the campus because of the hills. I don't think we can, I don't know, maybe we'll go into Glenwood. But it's certainly more central. And I think that the message that I wanted to give to you from Dean Moffitt and from all of us here is that we're really happy about that. We're really happy to become more central to the university. And we hope to become more engaged in lots of different ways through our faculty interactions with other faculty and our student interactions. And we're looking, part of our agenda for this year is to look at more and more ways for the law school to be integrated despite our only graduate school population. So welcome to the law school, and we welcome you back every time that you come this fall. And good, I feel like doing some kind of benediction, but I don't really know any. But I wish you really the best in taking on this really serious, important work for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jane. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you. The next point on our agenda is the approval of the minutes for the May 11th and 25th meetings. Do I hear a motion to approve? Second? And a vote to approve? Yes? Everyone approves. Anybody vote no? Any questions? No? The minutes are so approved. And the next matter, Ben Eckstein, the ASUO president, has requested that we move point 5, reports, earlier because he has a meeting at 4:20 when he was scheduled to give the reports. So I have accepted his request, and Ben will now give a report from ASUO president.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for letting me go early in the agenda. I actually plan to attend fully University Senate meetings, but there's a meeting at 4 on one of the topics I'm going to update you on that I need to be at. So before I begin, I'm Ben Eckstein. I'm the president of the ASUO, and I'd like the student senators here to stand real quick. That's Senator Harlan Meckling, Jenna Langham, Steph Matheson, and Emma Newman, and those are 4 of our 5 student senators who will be sitting on University Senate this year, and all were very excited to take this on, so yeah, I wanted to introduce them to you. I want to also thank University Senate President Robert Keir for his commitment to equal participation in shared governance by all stakeholders. I've been working with Robert throughout the summer and since he took office, and he's really shown that he's committed not only to including students fully in our system of shared governance, but also that he's really committed to the creation of an environment where students feel consistently valued and respected and wanted. And so I really want to thank Robert for creating that environment. And I look forward to working with Robert and with the entire body as we work together this year to make our campus better and to make sure that all of our stakeholders have a voice in a lot of the change and a lot of the decisions that are going to be happening on our campus throughout the year. So I did want to take time to update you on 2 pressing issues that are facing our student body right now. And there are many, but I picked 2 that I thought were worthy of an update at University Senate. First, this November, students at this university will be voting on whether or not they support the addition of a new $100 per term student fee for 30 years to fund the renovation and the expansion of the EMU, the Urban Memorial Union, and the Student Rec Center. My administration and the ASUO and many student groups within the EMU especially are working hard to promote this very important referendum and to educate students as much as possible. We're having this referendum because it affects 2 very important student buildings, particularly our student union, and students felt that it was very important that our student body had a chance to vote on whether or not they wanted these projects and this fee at this time. Students need to be informed about the impact of the decisions that they make when they vote on this critical issue. Already, many student concerns have gone unaddressed regarding the plans for the new EMU. Student groups could be receiving less space and less privacy, some of them, and that's a concern that we've heard if the proposed project moves forward as it is. For many student programs who need their safe spaces within our student union, this change would not be acceptable, and so students are working very closely to make sure that these concerns are addressed. Students and other stakeholders have not been properly engaged yet in the building process and in the decisions that are being made about this building. And we're concerned that what is the only profoundly student building on this campus, which is our student union, could lose accountability to the students who have throughout history been its primary investors. And so we're working very hard to ensure that the election process for this referendum maintains its full integrity as a student-run election. And currently we're struggling to combat what many students have seen as undue influence by non-students over our elections process. And so we're working very hard, and we're committed to making sure that the needs of student groups and the rights of all students to have a fair election are upheld throughout this process, and to make sure that we have a very full, inclusive campus conversation and that students have many opportunities to relay their concerns about these projects and to get accurate, objective information about their impact. As you likely know, the second issue I wanted to talk about was that the university has been granted permission to convert DPS into a campus police force, which President Keir alluded to in his introduction. The ASUO did oppose this decision, but we plan absolutely to maintain a very high level of involvement in the planning process as it moves forward, and we know that there will be several years of planning yet to come. We want to make sure that students are fully engaged in that process, as are faculty, classified staff, officers of administration, and all our campus stakeholders. My Vice President, Katie Taylor, serves on the UO Police Department Complaint Resolution Board Working Group, which is charged with developing an effective oversight mechanism to handle complaints and to protect the procedural rights of our campus community. Though the decision made by the State Board was inconsistent with the opinions of most of our student body, we will continue to work to ensure that students' voices are heard and that the campus community is very engaged in the process as we move forward. And I just wanted to close by saying that as the year moves forward, we are very thankful to have such an outstanding body of shared governance as this student senate, or not student senate, university senate, although the student senate is also a great body on our campus. Please don't hesitate to come to the ASUO, to come to me for information or for support. We're always happy to partner with other stakeholders on campus, and we're very committed to working closely with all of the campus community. So really, please feel free to consider the ASUO an ally and an open door. We're very grateful to have a University Senate that's so active on our campus and that has leaders like Robert Keir and the past few years, Nathan Tublitz, who are very committed to shared governance, and we look forward to being an active constituency on this body this coming year. So thank you very much for letting me give my update early, and I look forward to working with you all as the year goes on.
Thank you so much, Ben. And I have to say that I'm just so grateful for the student participation in this body because in working with Ben, I've come to understand your system better. And I know that each and every one of you in the system cares so much about shared governance. And that means so much to all of us. In many ways, this university is primarily about the students. And we must not forget that. Your voice is crucial to our success, and especially to working together to achieve these various goals that I itemized at the beginning of the meeting. So thank you so much for your commitment. Really appreciate it. The next point on the agenda is a State of the University address, which was going to be given by President LaRiviere, but he was invited by Hillary Clinton to the Indo-American Summit on Higher Education in Washington, and he is right now in the air. So he couldn't be here, and we're thrilled that Lorraine was able to come, Lorraine Davis, our new interim provost, to make remarks on his behalf and on her behalf. So let's welcome Lorraine.
Thank you, President Keir. I wouldn't say I have a prepared speech as much as some remarks about the state of the university on behalf of President LaRiviere. As Rob said, the President is in Washington, D.C., or at least on his way. It was a late invitation, if you will, for him to come and be present at the U.S.-India Higher Education Summit, and as he said, hosted by Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and the Indian Minister for Human Resource Development, Kapil Sibal. So I think it's fortunate for us that we have representation there, and he will be making a quick trip back because he will be participating in some of the UVO Foundation meetings on Friday as they unfold in the next couple of days. I guess from one perspective, the state of the university at the present time is transitional, at least from the leadership perspective. That's not to say that that's necessarily a mark of unrest, but a mark of circumstances and a mark of continual change, which often is and can be very positive. Changes cause you to re-examine what you're doing, how you're doing it, and who's doing it. And so I want to reassure you that even though there are, have been, and will be a number of transitions, particularly from the leadership perspective, that hopefully those can be positive directions, and they also can get the support of all the constituents at the University of Oregon to move forward in a positive way. So I'll just comment on a couple of those. I think you're aware of most of the transitions, but I just wanted to be sure that I at least commented or made you be aware of those. First of all is obviously my acting position in Provost. That's a transition. It is hopefully a temporary one for the year as Jim Bean takes a sabbatical to deal with health matters that require less of the intensity and less of the kinds of things that you deal with as a provost. So his intention, and my hope is that he will return by the next academic year to reassume his duties as the Provost of the University of Oregon. So I'm kind of reassuring you of that in a sense. Another transition that has been announced, the Vice President for Finance and Administration, Frances Dyke, had announced her intent and desire to retire at the end of this academic year, which is June 30th, 2012. There was a search that was undertaken for a CFO position, a Chief Financial Officer position, with a broader and probably more sophisticated portfolio than the one that is currently there for the Vice President for Finance and Administration. Because of the way in which that job description was probably described, there were probably, from at least the search firm's perspective, maybe only 5 or 6 people in the United States that would meet those qualifications. In the end, the President declared that that search was a failed search and has appointed Jamie Moffitt to be Vice President for Finance and Administration on a permanent basis beginning January 1. So she will be transitioning from her current position in the athletic department to the Vice President for Finance and Administration in January. Frances Dyke will be in her position through the end of June to allow for the kind of transitional education that is so critical in these kinds of positions. As most of you know, Charles Martinez, who was Vice President for Equity and Diversity, has also repositioned himself in the College of Education, and there is a search underway for the Vice President for Equity and Inclusion. In the meantime, while that search is ongoing, Robin Holmes, the Vice President for Student Affairs, is assuming the responsibilities of that office as well in this interim time period. So Robin Holmes is doing double duty in that regard. Since last year, there has been a new appointment for the Vice President for Research and Innovation and Dean of the Graduate School, Kimberly Espy. And she's been on campus now for 3 months and is working hard to structure that office and those activities and that realm of work in the way that will move it forward. She brings a lot of experience in that regard, came from the University of Nebraska. One of the other announcements that has been made is that Bob Berdahl, a former history professor here, a former dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at the University of Oregon, a former provost at the University of Illinois, a former president at the University of Texas, a former president at the chancellor in the University of California, Berkeley, after which he served as president of the AAU, the American Association of Universities, will be assisting the university's leadership in an advisory capacity. I believe he begins on Monday. I'm not positive. I've already had an hour-and-a-half conversation with him face-to-face, as well as numerous emails regarding some aspects of leadership and advice that he can, I believe, help the university with. And you might be involved in some of those interactions with him. I would expect that that will be the case. three areas that I anticipate he will be involved in. These are not set in stone. One will be some of the new challenges and opportunities that face us at the University of Oregon, but they are positive challenges from our perspective related to the Oregon legislation of Senate Bill 242 and Senate Bill 909. You will deal with some of those things related to some of your policies and constitutional matters, and the university as a whole will also be dealing with what that transition means and how those things will be impacting the University of Oregon and ways in which we operate. So that will be one item I believe that he will have a lot of wisdom given that he has been participating in as the leader, as well as many discussions as the AU president related to institutional autonomy, institutional position within the state. And when I mean autonomy, I mean setting up your own board, governing board, coordinating board within the state and within the university. So those are matters that I believe he can be very helpful on. Another matter that I think he can be advisory and help us on is the organizational structure of the university in terms of how we're structured from a decision-making perspective, how we're structured from an administrative perspective, and I believe your participation in not just that discussion, but that one will perhaps be forthcoming during this time period this year when he's with us. Another item that I believe he can assist with is related to what I would call strategic prioritizing. Rob mentioned the academic plan. We will be part of what I will be doing in my session on the 19th. We'll be updating you on some of the progress in the academic plan and presenting you with some of the directions that perhaps we might mutually consider as we move forward. At the same time, the Foundation Office and the Office of the Vice President for Development we have begun the initial steps for a campaign, financial campaign regarding fundraising. Now that the amount of support that the university receives from the state is the level that it is critical for our existence that our fundraising and external donations remain at a very high level and in fact increase. And I believe that Bob Radall can assist us in trying to match some of the values, which I think are very well expressed in the academic plan, the values of this university, with the campaign and or strategic prioritizing as we move through that process. So those are some of the things that I believe he will help with. We haven't had those firm discussions with the president involved, so there may be some other ideas that will be forthcoming related to that. There will be ongoing this year a search for the Senior Vice Provost for Academic Affairs for the position that Russ Tomlin currently holds. And you'll be hearing more about that process and participation as we proceed in that search. This morning, I announced to the campus that the Vice Provost for International Affairs is leaving the university at the end of December, and I will be appointing an interim person in that position within a couple of weeks, given that quick time frame of departure. So those are some of the transitions when you look at leadership at the university as we move into this academic year. But the university is about the students. That's the core of our mission. And let me just describe for you a few things about the student body as it exists now. We have more than 24,000 students. I think Rob referred to that in the presence of students, people, faculty. You notice the increase. And those are challenges in many ways. It also, however, allows us to be the robust research university that we are. So we're over 24,000 students, 4,000 freshmen, give or take 100, I think the last I heard. The GPA of our beginning class of freshmen coming in is 3.59. They are well prepared to participate in our academic endeavors, and you, I think, will find them to be very well qualified to participate at this university in strong academic ways, as well as wanting to participate in the full operation of the university and opportunities that present themselves. It's not just about the classroom, it's about all the other activities as they grow and learn to be educated citizens in our country. 23% of that freshman class are students of color, and I want to report to you that our first-year retention rate, going from freshman to sophomore year, was almost 86%, and that is exceptional. And that's a tribute to the faculty, the staff, the students, and everybody that believes in this institution. We're working together to accomplish our goals. You'll also note and have noted that we have a fair amount of capital construction ongoing. I believe somebody gave me the figure of $500 million worth of construction going on at the university. That does a lot for this economy, presents a lot of challenges for us as we facilitate our movement around campus. I had the privilege of walking through the East Campus Residence Hall, the new Global Scholars Hall that will be open next fall. They're on a fast track to get that done. That is an incredibly nice and facilitative facility, let's say, and it will serve us well. It's done first class. It's integrating, as many of the other halls have, but it's integrating the opportunities educationally as well as the opportunities that living on campus can provide. I've been meeting with each of the deans, and I've been asking them 3 questions, basically. 1, what are the good things going on in your school or college? What are the things you're working on this year? And how can the Provost's office be of help? I have to say that the things that are good going on in each of the units, I'm very impressed with the faculty and the personnel and all the support that's going on there. And they all are talking about that and speaking of the excellence in all regards, but particularly of the faculty and personnel. The challenges, many of them have to do with space and accommodations of all the students and the faculty that go along with the increased numbers of people that we have in our midst. How can I help them? The basic answer there is get out of my way. I don't intend to get out of their way. I plan to participate with them on their way to increase and improve the excellence of this institution. Let me say has been a lot that has changed since I was here as Vice President of Academic Affairs. I've been for those that don't know, I've been at the university for 41 years in some capacity. And I wasn't smart enough to stay away when asked to come and participate in this acting role. Lots has changed, but what hasn't changed, and why I agreed to do this acting role, is because of the quality of the people that are here, who care about the University of Oregon, who care about the students and our mission, and who care about each other. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on the behalf of the President and to again participate centrally in the University of Oregon and its excellence. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your remarks, Lorraine, and for being with us today. We're really looking forward to working with you. The next point on our agenda is the affirmation of appointments to Senate-elected committees. I'm going to read these. The appointments have already been made. The individuals have already accepted these appointments, and we thank each one of them for doing this and for their service. And then, by affirmation, we would like to approve of these appointments as a body. So, Faculty Advisory Council, Edward Kamanui from Center on Teaching and Learning, Ann Liskaya, English. Faculty Personnel Committee, Michael Russo, Business, Hailin Wang, Physics, Van Kolpen, Economics. Intercollegiate Athletics Committee, or IAC, Brian McWhorter, Music and Dance, Nathan Tublitz, Biology, Glenn Waddell, Economics. And then the Senate Exec, Glenn Waddell, Economics, Peter Keyes, Architecture, Harinder Kaur Khalsa, Romance Languages, and NTTF Senator, Carla McNelly, Classified Staff and Classified Staff Senator, and Kim Sheehan, Journalism and Chair of FAC. Senate Budget Committee, Angela Davis, Business, Lisa Frankill, English. So may I have a nomination to affirm, or a motion to affirm the appointments?
I move to affirm the nomination.
And a second, please? Second. Thank you. And now will all those in favor please say aye? Aye. And any in dissension? Please say nay. Thank you so much. The slate is approved. And thank you again to all of those who are offering their service through these important committees, especially in this year. The next point is a policy update, which will be brief because I already mentioned it in my 10 points at the beginning of this meeting. The 5 policies that are, let's say, the focus of our attention at the moment, and there are more than that, but the 5 that are the focus of our attention are the facilities use policy, the academic freedom and freedom of speech policy, the retirement and emeriti policy, the research misconduct policy, and the classified research policy. The first 2, facilities use policy and academic freedom and freedom of speech policy, were sent by the Senate to the President. He didn't sign them. They were then sent to the General Counsel, who reviewed them and has now made extensive revisions. Underline, italicize, bold, extensive revisions. So in many ways, we're back to square one, and we send these policies back to the committees in the Senate that first reviewed them. The third policy on that list of 5, retirement and emeriti, was revised over the summer by its committee and will be coming before us again, hopefully at the next meeting or meeting after. The 4th and 5th policies, research misconduct policy and classified research policy, have just been sent to us in a revised form by Lynette Schenkel. So they will now be reviewed again and go forward in the flow of policymaking. There will be, under point 6 of our agenda, a notice on a motion regarding the policy on policies. So I'm not going to make any more remarks at this point, but you will hear more about the policy on policies later in the meeting. The next point, 3.3, is our Senate retreat on October 22nd, and we're thrilled about this. This will be the first time in the history of the university that we've had a Senate retreat. We must always remember that we're the only body that is constituted in this way in the country. 5 constituencies, faculty, students, offices of administration, offices of research, and classified staff. And in formulating our vision plan through the retreat process, we will be formulating a vision plan that expresses our common will. It's so important that we do this at this time, especially given what Lorraine has just told us, that there are a number of new positions and a number of positions that will be considered in the near future. And so the vision that we craft together and that becomes a focus for our interaction with the central administration is crucial, now more than ever. So thank you for all those who have responded to our invitation to the retreat. I would like to ask all those that have not yet contacted us to please contact us very soon. We're making those final plans, and we really need you to respond to the emails that we've sent. The retreat will be on the 22nd, Saturday of this month, and at 8:30 we'll have a breakfast for those who would like to arrive a half hour before the meeting begins. And then from 9 to 12, and this is at the Lillis Business School, we'll be having the first session, which will be focused on formulating the vision plan, crafting a process for that, and we'll break into caucus groups at that time that will be considering various questions. We will then have lunch at the School of Music and Dance, and then from 1:30 to 4:30 in room 190 of the School of Music and Dance. And I don't know if you've ever been there before, but it's a wonderful facility with windows that open out in a way that very few concert halls are fortunate to have. It doubles as a rehearsal space and a concert hall for new music, for percussion ensemble, for the University Gamelan, and for many other ensembles. It's a beautiful space, and it has freestanding chairs, so we'll be able to actually arrange these in a circle and really be able to communicate with each other in a way that it's a little difficult in a kind of proscenium style setting. So that second session will be focused on discussing these various points that we formulated in the first session, but now across the boundaries of our various constituencies, and finding points of contact, finding points of discussion, and going forward in that way. We'll then formulate several task forces coming out of the retreat that will continue the process that we find together, and then finalize the vision plan. So that's an overview of what we will be doing at the retreat, and we really look forward to your participation in this process. So important at this time, especially in a time of great change, challenge, and opportunity at the university. The next point is the President's Forums and Provost Forums, which I've already discussed. But I'd like to just, and I announced before when they would be and where they would be. So you know about that, and you'll be receiving some more communications about that. But I really see this as a very important step forward in our shared governance system, that now every member of the university community can come and have an open discussion and respectful discussion with the provost and the president in a way that we didn't quite have that kind of a conduit for that kind of discussion before. So I encourage every senator to be there, especially at the beginning of this journey we're taking together, one in each quarter. But please attend on October 19th, Wednesday, Bell Hall, School of Music and Dance at 4 o'clock, the Provost Forum, and then President's Forum, November 2nd, also a Wednesday, again in Bell Hall, and from 4 to 6. Look forward to seeing you there, and just to say that our vision plan will be well on its way to formulation at that point. So much of the work that we'll be doing on October 22nd can be woven into these discussions. And the more that each of you participate and bring ideas from your various units and your own personal ideas, the more successful these forums will be. So we're really looking forward to a lively and open discussion in each of these forums. The next point is very close to my own heart. It's the Respectful Workplace Ad Hoc Committee. Over the summer, Carla McNally, at my request, formed a task force that was looking into this question that she raised when she gave a very moving speech, and I would say even a plea before the Senate at our May meeting, relating to the whole issue of respectful workplace. And in so many ways, the way in which each of us interact with classified staff and how we can improve our relationships, each of us, with classified staff. And I was deeply moved by her speech, and I went up to her immediately afterwards and said, what can we do? How can we help to move this issue forward? And both of us together decided that a task force would be a good way to start. She convened a task force, always staying in close communication with me, and they have done some phenomenal work over the summer. It's, in so many ways, the ideal of what you would want for a group of faculty, students, offices of administration, offices of research, and classified staff coming together over the summer of all times and really working on an issue that's of critical importance to all of us. Now, based on their work, because it's been so substantive, they are now receiving the status of Respectful Workplace Ad Hoc Committee. And this work will go forward, and there will be a report from the committee at our next meeting. So I'd like to thank you, Carlos, so much for everything you and the committee have been doing. I think they really deserve it. At this point in the meeting, I'd like to say that I would like to hear from those of you in other constituencies about your needs and your hopes. We will, of course, be discussing those at the retreat. But there are certain pressing issues that go beyond even what we might do at the Vision Plan Summit, if you wish to call it that. And I'd really like to invite every one of you who have special concerns, burning issues, that you might want to first talk with me in a kind of private way about those issues and how they might be approached. To please do so. I met with the OA Council in the spring quarter, and I'll be going and meeting with them again. And I'm very much hoping that they will have a task force. They're looking at various issues that might then become the focus of a task force and some future action through the Senate. But I invite every constituency to do this. I will be working very closely with the students, going to the ASUO Senate and really speaking directly with them about their needs and how they can achieve action through the Senate on a variety of issues. And it's an invitation to every constituency. I need to hear from you, or we won't know which issues kind of go beyond the vision plan. The last point is about the election of a Senate Vice President, and that will be done in November. So just to let you know, we will be making another appeal for nominations, and the election will now be in November. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Nathan Tublitz, our immediate past president, who will be giving a report, actually giving an open discussion on the revision to the UO Constitution, which will be coming before the entire university faculty assembly later in the year. Nathan.
Where is that computer? You're over? Okay. I'm going to need you to put up at some point in time some documents. Okay. Thanks. Thank you very much, Rob, for asking me to make this presentation. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to give about 5 or 10 minutes of why we're doing what we're doing and give you a major overview of some of the changes and then open it up for discussion. Back in the let me give you some context. Back in the mid 2000s, back in the mid 2000s, there was a issue on campus regarding the Iraqi war and opposition to the Iraqi war. That issue landed in the Senate, then moved to the University Assembly. That issue was, there was a potential vote in the University Assembly, but that vote was squashed by a presidential decision that basically stated there was not a quorum. From that, and the president decided on the basis of some legal argument, quasi-legal, that there was, that we could not even vote. There was a question of whether that legal argument was appropriate, and the Senate in 2007 asked the Department of Justice to write a report, to issue a ruling on what the quorum requirements are for the University Assembly. That ruling was issued in November 2008, and among other things, that ruling stated that the charter of the university, which states that the president and the professor shall govern this university, is sacrosanct and should be followed. Because we did not have a document that actually turned that sentence into a working set of procedures, the university developed a constitution. That constitution was a very good one, and is a very good one, and it's the one we're working under now. It was adopted by the Statutory Faculty Assembly in 2010 and approved by the president shortly thereafter. And that's what we're working on now, under. Now, we're up to the present. In the present, it was realized that there were some gaps in that constitution. For example, there was not a discussion on the quorum of the quorum requirement for the assembly, and certain other things. And it was realized that, like any other document, and this is the legal document that we run our governance system on, it could be improved. So the governance committee that wrote that document started to rewrite it. And that's where we are now, and that's why I'm coming to you as the second chair in this committee, because the previous one, Paul Van Dantelar, decided that this was so much work that he actually took a position in another university. So I'm looking for new positions to avoid. So I'm here to present the work of this committee. I want you to know that this is the work of the committee. And let me tell you what really you have to do, which is to listen to what I'm going to say and then give me some feedback so I can take it back to the committee. And I want you to, at some later date, send me all your comments, specific comments about changes. Now, this document is going to come back to the Senate for approval next month. But it doesn't go into effect because this body can't actually approve and adopt it. It is the higher level body, the statutory faculty, that is the only body that can adopt this. But it was felt that because there were some some changes to the way the Senate runs, that out of respect and appropriateness, we should bring it to the Senate. Okay, so that's where we are. I'm only going to spend a few minutes with this. Let's see. Now, can you run? Okay, over there. Okay, let's open up that one, the word-by-word comparison. If you haven't looked at this, and I have no reason to believe that you should, okay, at the moment, and I'll tell you why. Because this document, Adobe Reader, right? There you go. This document has been really reworked. Okay? And while we're working on this, while Chris works on this, let me just say that what happened is that all the different sections in the document were reviewed for clarity, and this is a big surprise to you. There's like 10 people on this committee. All are very intelligent people, all of whom thought almost every word should be changed. And so that's what we did. We changed almost every word. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean we changed the meaning, but I think what we did is we clarified the meaning. Okay? And so we have clarified every section. But actually, there's only 3 sections that were really significantly different and updated. So, although Chris is going to get up this comparison maybe at some point in time, you don't even have to do that, because all I wanted to show you is that we just completely rewrote the whole thing. Okay, but it was more like, changing the sentence to read, instead of the University Senate shall pass a motion on this or this or this, it was changed to make it slightly clearer. So, while Chris works on this, and I can actually put it on my computer, Chris, I have it on my computer, Chris, if you'd like me to put it in here. We can just roll it on my computer here. Okay, so if you excuse me all for about a minute, okay, so I can plug this in. Hopefully get to this. Okay. And I will shift. Okay. This is, okay, so I have all of the, okay, so this is what the before and after looks like. Now, if you would like, we could go through every change. I agree. Okay. We're not going to do that. What I'm going to do, with your permission, is so this is the Constitution as it was, as it is now. This is what we are working under. It's got a number of sections. But instead of going through that, I think it's best for us to go through this one, which is the new one. Okay? Now I'm just going to scroll through this new one, okay? Because we were really good, we actually put in a table of contents. Which actually sounds silly, but actually it's really helpful. And we're academics, so don't laugh at us. Okay? There's a prologue. The prologue hasn't changed much. The governing principles and delegation of, this is essentially the same as previous. It's just been made clearer. And you will hear that repeatedly. Section 2, there's a whole set of definitions in this. Because it's very important to define what a professor is. Now, it sounds kind of silly, but it's actually not. Okay? Or constituent groups, or statutory faculty, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? And let me just point out, just for those of you who are new to this business, that we had an assembly, and that assembly, which was the overarching governance group here at this university, consisted of all the professors on campus, in other words, the teaching professors, but it also included many other people who had the rank of professor. It also included students from the student, had like 25 or 30 students from the court, from the ASUO executive, et cetera, et cetera. And this was to be inclusive. However, the Department of Justice said you can't do that because the charter says it's the president and the professors. And back in 1876, there was a very limited definition of what a professor is. That's the teaching faculty, and therefore we've replaced the assembly with the statutory faculty, which is now the teaching faculty. So that's been a change, and that's why this had to be included here. Okay? Relevant statutes and regulations. There is, we just want to make sure that everybody understood what we're referring to here in the document. These are ORSs, that's Oregon Revised Statutes, that's essentially the laws of the state. And the next level down is Oregon Administrative Rules, which are essentially the laws for the university. And then there's, depending upon who you are, whether you're the chancellor or the president, there's something called the Internal Management Directives, blah, 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 of the OUS. Okay? We can talk about this like some other item. Okay, composition of the Senate, Section 4. 4. Nothing's changed from the previous Senate, previous Constitution, or the current Constitution, but those of you out there now know that actually the Constitution of this body changed from last year because of the new Constitution. And we just remake this clearer. Eligibility of participation, that's in other words how we run our elections, that's sort of straightforward. Election process, that's more how we run elections for non-student senators, simple. That's section 6. Okay, here's where we get to some of the changes that I want to point out. Change number 1, the University Senate. So, what power do we have? We could have a real long discussion about this, but essentially we have legislative power to legislate changes in the university based upon what is a consensus by the university attorneys and the president and the faculty and the Senate of what our role is. One of the things that's absolutely clear is that our role is involved in curriculum and student conduct and in other things as well. So we can mandate things. That's called legislation. On the other side is something called resolutions. We can resolve that we don't like the fact that we're still in Afghanistan, but we can't do anything about it, and the president can't do anything about it. The president doesn't have to. A more relevant thing is perhaps the issues that we've had surrounding the Riverfront Research Park, where we've had repeated resolutions urging the president not to build on that particular land. But the president doesn't have to listen to us. But in legislation, the president does. Now, there's a middle ground which we never actually delineated, which we are delineating in this document, which is something called policies. There are a number of policies in the university that run all the way from employment policies to curricular issues to grievance issues to lots of things. And the policy czar on this campus is sitting in the back of the room for many of these things, Vice Provost Russ Tomlin. And he has in his office, and Provost Bean, while he was still Provost, and I'm sure Lorraine is doing this too, there is now this policy library that is now on the web. We agreed last year that for policies which affect the university, they should come to the University Senate. And so we have now delineated policies as a separate type of action in the Senate from legislation and from resolutions, this middle ground. Now, so that's the first major change in this document. The second major change is to clarify in no uncertain terms, let me step back. If the Senate passes a motion or legislation, it's adopted. If the Senate passes a policy and then it goes to the president, he adopts it, she adopts it, it's fine. But what happens if we disagree? We have to have something written down so that we have a process by which we respectfully deal with things without pulling out the 6-shooter. Okay? So we have delineated that. And I've put this up here. This is the process for legislation. I'm going to read this to you so you understand what the process is. And now this is 7212. If the university, and this is for legislation, if the university president concludes that it's not in the best interest of the university to implement legislation adopted by the University Senate, he or she shall come to the Senate within 60 days of the Senate action to suggest withdrawal or amendment of the legislation. If the Senate does not accept the president's suggestion, and if the president and the University Senate fail to create mutually satisfactory legislation within 60 days after the president's appearance in the Senate and the university presidents shall then jointly call an assembly, that's the statutory faculty assembly, to allow the statutory faculty to fulfill its oversight obligation according to procedures outlined in Section 9, which we will get to. The decision of the faculty assembly, which supersedes that of the Senate, shall either be vetoed or
Should the action by the faculty assembly fail for lack of quorum during electronic voting, the president shall either implement or veto the Senate legislation within 30 days after termination of voting. In other words, we now have a process, we're proposing a process by which if the Senate passes something that the administration doesn't like, we now go up to the next level. And this is the same now for policies. I'm not going to read you that section, but essentially that process occurs the same for policies. It doesn't occur for resolutions because resolutions are non-binding to the president. And the other thing I want to emphasize in all of this is that the president has complete right of veto of everything. And because of the change in the structure with OUS, the buck stops with the president now. We have no right of going to a further higher authority, at least one that lives on this planet. Okay? And so I just want you to know how this process works. All right? Come back. That's section 7.2, or 7. Okay? It divides things into legislation, policies, and resolutions, and sets out a process by which one adjudicates differences of opinion. Section 8 is University Senate Rules and Procedures. Now, this is actually virtually unchanged from previous, the current Constitution. It's been, of course, worked on a little bit, but no new idea has been added. The other section, the second of the three sections that have been changed dramatically, is the oversight by the faculty assembly. And this is not so much as been changed, but that a whole new, the process by which the faculty assembly runs has been actually delineated in very clear language of how the assembly works. And I'm not going to go over all the little process changes, but I do want you to see this 9.2 at the bottom of this page 11. There is if something comes to the assembly has a three-step process, and I will read this to you. The three-step process leading to action by the faculty assembly shall begin with a statutory faculty meeting, an in-person meeting of the statutory faculty chaired by the president or a designee in his role as president of the faculty in order to discuss the motion on the agenda and, if appropriate, take action as detailed below. And then it says if the president fails to call a meeting, the Senate president shall be responsible for the meeting. This is a meeting where we just talk. We do this well. We just talk. There is no voting. The reason is because we can't actually really guarantee that we can get a lot of people there because people have other commitments. And this is a way of getting information out. This will be minuted. This will be actually taped. And people will be able to see what the conversation was. The second step is an online exchange of information and opinions regarding the motion. And the third step is an online voting. This is maximizing our democratic process. Okay? That is the major change in this section. And then all the other changes, and the ones that all of these things starting with 9.21 is actually the process by which the statutory faculty votes, or the whole meeting, and that three-step process occurs. And it also includes a quorum requirement. And let me just read you this 9.3.1 or 9.3. A motion is passed when the number of aye votes exceeds the number of nay votes, except as noted below. And the two exceptions are if there's a contested legislation here, the number of the contested legislation shall pass when the number of ayes exceed 1/4 the statutory faculty membership and is greater than the number of nays. In other words, it's a 1/4 quorum requirement. And if you want to change the Constitution, it's a higher level requirement, 1/3. Okay. Again, let me reiterate, the president does not have to follow even an override by the statutory not be a good idea not to do that, but the president has that right. The last thing is a new section. It's very short, but it's an important one. And that is that the governance archive, that we propose two things. One is a governance archive. In other words, that there's an online archive of all resolutions and legislation passed by the Senate and by the Assembly. I think that's being in the process of being done so one can just flip through them and find them. And then an online policy library, which again is under the purview and control of the administration. And it's been agreed that in this new age, it's really important to have something on the web. So you can go to it and see the rules. So we're requesting that all these policies are put on the web, and actually that they don't become policies unless they are on the web. And just to give you an aside, somewhere back deeper in this earlier in this document, there's a little line which we'll probably take out, which has to do with this IMD, this Internal Management Directive from the Oregon University System. And for the life of us, we can't find it on the web. I mean, it's cited all the time. Why? We've got all this power, but we can't find it. And it's not minuted, it's not anywhere. So it's important that we have our rules out there and transparent for everybody to see. Those are the changes. I'm sorry I've taken so much of your time. I'm happy now to answer any of your questions.
And we set up a microphone there if you would like to go to the microphone, or if you feel that you can speak to the room without a microphone, as you wish.
Dave, you can,
Well, in one sense, I'm reticent to be the first question, but maybe I can add context,
please.
as we proceed through the questions. I've worked along with a great faculty group on the Constitution, and it is significant that we're headed toward one. Nathan and I are aware that it is going to be important, it is in fact important, that this document, as proposed and ultimately be voted on by the faculty, be reviewed by General Counsel. I wonder if you could scroll back to the very first word in the document. Is there a quick way in with us? Just on the top.
Watch.
Thank you. Oh, can I sit down?
I did it so fast.
Now stay there. Nathan and I have talked. Good, thank you. Nathan and I have talked at length about the next steps in refining this document and bringing it together, because it's a document that is approved by both the president and the statutory faculty. This has now been read by General Counsel in a careful way. When Nathan and I talked last week, though, we realized that General Counsel's commentary on, even at the level of specific wording, there were enough of them, and they were significant enough that they could not be conflated or woven into the committees. They needed to be separated out as distinctive commentary. And I will share those with the Senate. I have not yet shared them with anyone. Well, I mean, except within Johnson Hall. But I will share those immediately with the Senate in the following vein. They are not meant to be dispositive. They are meant to be the General Counsel's reading of whether a word should be consult or confer. I mean, I don't mean it at all to trivialize legal advice. But I'll give you an example to keep it succinct. There will be changes through the document that reflect discussions within Johnson Hall, certainly prompted by General Counsel, that begin almost with the third line. And in terms of a distinction without difference, I'm not going to comment on whether it is. When you get to the word adopted by the statutory faculty on blank, you'll see that the document that I'm going to share with you says ratified by the statutory faculty on blank. That is a suggestive change coming to the document. I'm not quite sure what the distinction is, and I don't mean to say, I don't mean to make this a point of contest between the two documents. But that was why I didn't yet share. Last Wednesday, Nathan and I were working hard toward a deadline. I should say I was working hard toward Nathan's deadline, and I couldn't meet it. And then we agreed, even as I discussed some of the changes, that for me to lot it out there without some context would add confusion. In other words, these changes, whether we stay with the word adopted or ratified, if we're the General Counsel's version, it would be ratified and ratified instead of adopted and ratified. These will be discussed within the faculty working group, and then a recommendation will be brought to the statutory faculty. But I wanted to explain another document that will come up, and I still have to think through with your help and Rob's help how to avoid confusion. I've already mentioned to one committee member or a very active participant, Frank Stahl, that these are not meant to be dispositive. We can still argue whether the word ratified is better than adopted, if we want to.
As long as we don't use the word dispositive.
I like it.
No,
So
so,
I find that a dismissive comment.
no. Please, I'm not even sure I understand.
I've been talking to lawyers a lot lately, and they use words like dispositive.
So let me just tell you, to succinctly summarize the process, what will happen here is that you will talk to us, we will have this conversation now, what we're having, and then you may want to send some changes, as Chris Jones has done already, and done an excellent job of going through it, and I appreciate his work. The General Counsel will send some suggested changes. It's open to the community, and the community will send some suggested changes. And then this committee, which, by the way, since we are talking about the committee, let me just tell you who it is, because it's really important. The committee consists of Chris Prosser, Dave Dussault, Deb Olson, Frank Stahl, Gordon Hall, Dave Cuban, John Bonine, Yet Foss, Peter Keys, Robert Keir, Susan Gary, Scott Pratt, and Headers. All of those people have worked really hard, and I'm really, really grateful. That's my email. We will get together one more time, massage the document, make the changes that are necessary, or that we think are necessary, and then bring it to the statutory faculty for conversation and then a vote. Okay? So that's what will happen. Oh, you know what I need from you all, and I don't know whether Rob said this earlier, but we actually do need you to say who you are and your affiliation for official purposes. Thank you.
I'm Randy Sullivan. I'm an instructor in the chemistry department. I have a question. Does the committee have any legal advice other than the General Counsel? With all due respect, sometimes it's best not to ask the barber if you need a haircut.
Especially for me.
Right.
Thank you. We have not employed legal advice, but we have two attorneys on the committee, John Bonine and Susan Gary, and they have done an outstanding job of giving us potential alternative interpretations that are legally appropriate.
Able to discuss the distinction between ratifies.
I should certainly hope so. I have one more, but I'll wait until we go around. Thank you.
Ron, Mr. Political Science, I'd just say thanks for doing it. This is the kind of stuff that you don't know isn't working until it doesn't work. So, I mean, whether, there might be things to change.
It's not me, actually. It's the committee.
Yeah, right. No, I'm not thanking
So I
you.
thank the committee.
The whole committee is great. I just think it's good that somebody does this. I would not have signed up to do it, but I'm glad somebody else did it.
But, although there is a lot of this, what word to use, this is the document we will run the university from. And so it needs to be very clear. There is another step, by the way, which will be perhaps even more contentious, and that is a discussion of whether this document, which sort of how the Senate and the statutory faculty run, whether something like this will actually mandate how decisions are made at the unit level. That's a conversation we're going to have, but that's why this needs to be very clear. Anybody else? Yes, please.
I'm Emma Newman. I'm on ASUO Senate Life Science seat. I'm just wondering what date we should send revisions to you by.
Like 5 o'clock today. I think the email went out, and I don't think the students got email, but I think the senators did. Not general students, but let me know, I'll send it to you. The date is a week from Friday. Okay? Because what we want to try and do is get this going so we can actually get this adopted by like the end of the day. Any other? Yeah.
I'm sorry, yeah.
No.
Thanks, double dipper. Is what was I going to say?
And for the record, that's Randy. So.
Randy Sullivan, Chemistry Department. If some member or some unit within the university is de facto implementing a policy without having it approved by the university senate, do we have any way within this constitution specified of bringing them to task for that?
No, and that's a really interesting and important point. And that's been raised to me, and I'm bringing it to the governance committee for them to consider at our next meeting.
Okay.
We may choose to punt on that one and do something different, but I think it's really is important. There are many, many units, for example. I've gotten, as a result of this, I've gotten a question that's sort of similar about a half a dozen times now in the last 24 hours, which is, well, you know, Unit X doesn't have actually any governance document of how it runs. Does that mean that the Senate, that this document runs that unit? Well, this document doesn't actually say very much about how things work at the unit level. So it's a really good and important question, and we haven't addressed it yet, so I will take your concern to the committee.
This may be restating, and obviously I think you emphasized, but with regard to policies, it's the policies that would rise to the policy library that this body deals with. If the Teaching and Learning Center had a policy on whether they give a refund for a workshop or not after one session of the workshop, that would not be one that would be brought to this body. Now, if a policy, though, is being proposed, and there is agreement on this, if a policy is being proposed to move to this authoritative and very visible policy library, each proposed policy will go before the Senate executive as one of the steps to determine whether the Senate has a role or seeks, the Senate as a full body seeks a role.
And Dave has actually said it precisely, correctly, with respect to policies. But there's another aspect of this that has not been defined, and that is, how does a unit run its governance system? And do units have something written down? Can the head of that unit change that governance system willy-nilly? And how does the governance system at the unit level relate to this document? Those are issues that we will be discussing, and maybe we'll say, we just leave everything to the unit to decide. Or maybe not. I can't get wrong. Yes?
I have a question. I hope I'm allowed to ask a question appropriately, but what is the deadline for the General Counsel to give his comments, and will those then be available to the university community? Because we don't have that.
And I appreciate that question because Nathan and I talked about the question of whether I should suggest a series of those changes that have been suggested to me, or whether in a more holistic way, what I don't want it to be is competing documents, but they're available. That work has been completed. As I said, I talked to more lawyers. Well, I talked to one lawyer very much.
But will, for example, what part will that commentary by the General Counsel play in this process? What role does it have in the ultimate writing of the document that will then be voted on?
What I would suggest, and I suggest this with a question mark at the end, because we should talk about that.
You better speak so they can hear you.
Well,
I hope everybody can hear you.
Some of the changes are ones where the faculty, the statutory faculty, the university community will want to weigh in. some of the suggested changes that will be in the document that I put up reflective of General Counsel's guidance address questions, for example, of the quorum. That's something that the committee, as I was speaking with a colleague before the meeting, addressed and gave careful thought to. My understanding is that there's not a legal question at the heart of that. It's a question of a typical definition of a quorum. So I want to get those up for colleagues across the campus to discuss, and I will be posting them probably, I guess, under my name, not with pride of authorship.
Well, what I'd like to say is that I think there should be one place and one document that people are considering. I mean, I don't think it's fair to ask our colleagues in all constituencies to be looking at different documents and trying to parse the differences between document A and document B. So, and I also don't think it's fair late in the game for a second document that has a certain presupposed importance to come into the game and somehow rule over a document that we've all worked on so hard together. So I would like to know in short order, in fact, I'd like to really know by 5 o'clock tomorrow what the game is.
What do you recommend?
I recommend
Let me propose a solution, okay? The response by the University Council has two parts to it. There is a legal response. In other words, this section is illegal. And then there's the non-illegal, there's the other suggested changes. The committee will review all of these changes, including the changes that Chris has presented and everybody else.
Right.
And the committee will come forward with a final revision document. That document will then come to the community for conversation. It will be at that time that the General Counsel can step forward and say, this is why I made this suggestion, and you chose not to do it, and that's fine because it's not making this document illegal. Or maybe it is making the document illegal. That conversation will occur in the statutory faculty meeting. And it's the statutory faculty that will end up making the decision whether the recommendations by anybody on this campus should be in the final document.
I'll work with you and with Chris Prosser, because I don't want to introduce the confusion. It is not at all intended to be a competing document or a document that supplants. And that was it. From the time that Nathan and I talked last week, I've been wondering, how do I do this in a way that moves the discussion further and illuminates things, then moves it back to the working
Well,
group?
I would suggest you send me a copy, and I'll bring it to the group.
Yeah, I can do that. I can do that, and I can meet Rob's like that.
That's great, because it's, what we want is a clarity of discussion.
Exactly.
And so we need to have the parameters set in a way that's helpful to everyone.
Right.
Great.
And by the way, just to bring you up to date of what really is transpiring in this conversation, because it's important for you to know. Some of the motions that we passed in this Senate while I was Senate President last year regarding policies were passed with the approval of the administration. And then General Counsel came back after the fact and said, these are illegal or inappropriate, or I'm rewriting them. That's not the way this body should work. We need to have a system by which General Counsel, the administration, the students, the faculty, the classified staff, officers of administration, everybody has a voice in a consensus-mediated discussion and final document. But once the final document is passed, it's passed. Okay, so we're just trying to get General Counsel to follow the same rules that everybody else is following. That means come in and say your piece at the appropriate time. And the appropriate time is before 5 o'clock at the end of next week.
Carla McNally, classified staff senator, and thank you, Nathan, for explaining this so eloquently, and for Robert for also having this as our open discussion topic today. I'm curious if the General Counsel is able to provide us with the IMDs in the spirit of transparency?
Yes, I have actually seen them. I'm not general counsel. Let me first. I'm not JD impaired or JD enabled, whichever way. But it's a reflection on on an OUS system that has not worked well. That something passed in January of last year, and I hate it that I know these numbers. IMD 3.105, and I know things like ORS 3.52, things I never wanted to, numbers I didn't want to. But IMD 3.105 flipped the cart, and we called to find out, was it indeed passed? It was passed, but still 11 months later, it's not up on their website. It is for real, though. But when Nathan said it's imperative that, well, we will of course share it with you because I think it sort of sullies our Constitution to have a little line that says, as of the approval of this Constitution, IMD 3.105 was not there. That trivializes a document that should be more, not a lifelong document, but should have more immortality than a reference like that. But yes, I can share it. And what it did was remove the Chancellor's authority to override the President.
I'm trying to find the OUS IMD homepage, and just to show you that homepage was last updated in 1998. Okay, I mean, if you search all the OUS pages, you get the list of IMDs, and they're from 1998. So they're working on the updating, not as fast as we might like. Okay. Any other questions? Wow, I could. Yeah, it's 1998. Just look at it. Wow. Anybody else? I apologize at some level for having to bring this up because this ends up being a very precise set of wordings, but this is crucial to our governance, and I appreciate your patience and your thoughtful questions and issues. If you have any other issues you'd like to raise, please send them to me. We will keep them confidential. Okay? Thank you very much. Chris?
Before he leaves, I would like to personally thank Nathan Tublitz. He's incredibly modest and he never takes a compliment, but I want you to know that last year while he was, everybody knows him, is shaking your head, but I want you to know that last year while he was Senate President, he not only, let's say, rewrote with consultation, of course, and with consensus building, the Senate bylaws, but he stepped into the position of chair of the Internal Governance Committee rather late in the game, and has also championed that effort. So I think we really owe him a round of applause and thanks. And we're ahead of schedule, so this is a good omen for the year. Announcements and communications from the floor. First, notice of motions, and the first one will be, in fact, presented by Nathan Tublitz.
Oh, well, I'm just saying notice a motion to approve the revised Constitution.
Great. So that will be coming to you next meeting, and then now Glenn Waddell will tell us about policy on policies.
I'll save my chair for this too.
Fine.
Let me introduce it with this. Some 10 years ago, I guess, I was introduced to the Academy with a little white sheet that came in my mailbox that said Committee on Committees, and I was confused by this. And now I am the one with the privilege of introducing the policy on policies. Yeah, so that's the official notice of motion that we're going to be preparing as an SEC in the next few weeks.
Great, thank you very much. And when we have a Constitution on Constitution, you know we're going to be real trouble. So we haven't gone there, and hopefully we never will. So finally, are there any other communications or announcements?
Can I introduce myself?
Yes, please.
Hello, I'm Paul Simons. I'm the parliamentarian. And while I'm appointed by the President and serve at his convenience, in fact, Robert's Rules of Order says that he disagrees with me more than occasionally that I should resign. But as long as I'm parliamentarian, all of you have access to me if you wish advice on parliamentary procedures. And I believe my email is still listed in the Senate webpage. I also have a home phone number which is in the regular phone book, and I do actually answer the phone and give advice over the phone if you like it. Anyway, I'm available.
Thank you so much. Your service is so important to us. It's very helpful and often behind the scenes when we have a question about the appropriateness of a certain action. We consult Paul on a regular basis. So any other announcements or motions? Yes.
In Tublitz biology, I'd like to raise an issue that has come to me recently, and it's basically an issue of where I'm a bit frustrated, and I want the Senate to understand where that frustration is coming from. It has to do with the Distinguished Service Awards and the ceremony associated with that. The University Senate issues very few awards. They issue a number of awards to specific individuals internally within the university for distinguished work. But the University Senate's one of its highest awards is something called the Distinguished Service Award, which is awards that are given to up to 3 people every year who contribute. They're people outside the university. You can't get it if you're part of the university. There are people who receive this award for outstanding service to the state of Oregon and beyond. People like Helmut Rilling, people like several former governors, people who have done incredible philanthropic work. People who made it interesting scientific breakthroughs that affected the university, the state. This is an award that's given by the Senate. We have a committee that runs that process, that approves those awards, and then those awards are then finally brought here, and we do this in secrecy because it's a personnel kind of issue. We ask everybody to leave the room, and we issue them. They've been issued since, I believe, 1956, every year. Last year, we initiated a process with full cooperation with the administration of having those awards, which are oftentimes, there was never a festivity associated with it. We had it at the end of this first meeting last year, and we had it outside. We gave it to very well-deserving people. You all were invited. There was a little ceremony and good food and good feeling because we had given a really important award. This year, for reasons that I don't understand, the administration has unilaterally not allowed us to do this, and instead the administration is holding its own separate award ceremony tomorrow for the awardees who are perfect or wonderful awardees. But nobody in the Senate's invited outside the Senate president. And it's like we don't exist. So I am raising a significant, now one could argue that this is not that important, but it's symbolic. This is what we do. And if this is taken away from us without a discussion in the Senate chamber of something that we do that is most important, then it raises the question of why we're doing any business whatsoever. And so I officially object to the process by which this award has been effectively, the giving of this award has been effectively taken away from us by the administration.
By giving you the actual presentation.
The presentation of this award.
Yes?
Well, I would like to respond to Nathan's point. I understand it well. From 1956 to 2009, the Distinguished Service Award, which was established by the Faculty Assembly, they authorized the President to then bestow the award, was given at commencement. When we moved away, under President Riviere's leadership, we moved away from a commencement that had a brunch where these were awarded. They were awarded in a very small group of people. And they were awarded before commencement. When we moved away from that, what we realized, and this was last year, that we didn't have a venue in which to give the award. And so I worked with then President Tublitz on what I think is a very good idea, and that is linking it to the Senate. One thing I'd like to correct, and I want to make sure that it is that you understand that this is not a lack of communication based on bad faith. It turned out that one of our recipients is out of the country on the day of this meeting and can only come on the 13th. And so the quandary we faced was, do we do this without our recipients after the Senate? It happened to be a former colleague that many of you know. He simply wasn't available, Robert Burdock. We moved it to the 13th. But what I want to assure you, is that not only by my comments here today, but by every email, every deans and directors email, every communication on the university's website, the president has invited not only members of the Senate, every one of you, but every member of the staff, classified staff, officers of administration, officers of instruction, and in a recent deans and directors email that was sent out of our office, it reiterated that. It said, please make sure that the president's invitation is to everyone. So that's the one thing I would take. The one that points perhaps to the inadequacy of communication. I've run into friends on campus, and I've said, are you going to be there? They said, I never got the email. And in fact, an email went out from the president. It went out, and we double-checked, and we found out that it systematically went out to all the listservs. There were no computer glitches. But in the bombardment of emails that come, perhaps somebody overlooked it. And that's why we sent the deans and directors. So the one part, Nathan, I understand. When you say you were not invited,
how the email was sent out is different. This was a Senate ceremony last year. We agreed it was a Senate ceremony, not an administrative ceremony. As a result, if that's going to be changed, that has to be changed by this body, not by an edict of the administration, to change that ceremony that is run by the Senate for an award that's given by the Senate. That's my point.
And David, one thing, I think you and I and Rob can talk further about this. We changed it to be linked to the Senate in a conversation, bilateral conversation, you and me. The Senate did not vote on it. Now, it was a good change. It didn't work this year. So it's the day after, and you're all invited. And Senate President Keir is invited, and graciously he's accepted to give the remarks, the introductory remarks. But this probably should be settled and solved by our Senate President.
Yeah, today, Dave and I had a discussion about this, and I made my own thoughts clear, and Nathan has now made, as immediate past president, his thoughts clear, and I'm confident that we're heading in the right direction. There's no reason why we can't, in the spirit of shared governance, do this together in the future, but in a way where we've been consulted at every step in the process, and where we have a clear sense of a process. That's fine. We need to do that, and this is what faces us in so many aspects of what we're doing this year. This is what we're trying to do.
And I couldn't agree more strongly.
This is another example of what we must work together to resolve. And we are doing it, and we will be doing it in so many quarters of those various items that I brought up today.
I don't want to take the last word except with one invitation that I hope you share. That is, please do come. We wanted people, when people would get back to us and say, I was invited, but could I bring along my associate? Absolutely. Please do come. I hope you will echo that.
I really hope that everybody will attend and enjoy this ceremony. And today Dave asked me to make some remarks, which I will be making, and we should all really celebrate these superb individuals who are honoring the award.
We've had 300 RSVPs, but we've got food for more. So please come.
So now before we adjourn, I would like to remind everybody to please sign in. It's really important that you do that. We actually do have the need to know exactly who was at the meeting for very specific reasons that you are required not to miss more than a certain number of meetings within a certain period of time. So we really need to know who is here today. And thank you again for your participation today. You are what makes this body successful in this endeavor. Thank you so much. And we're now officially adjourned.